Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. It is Thursday, March 16th, the start of March Madness College Basketball Day. It's a very exciting day for everybody. Jamie, also known as Kyle Hamilton's birthday. Thank you. Happy birthday to Kyle Hamilton. So we're going to be talking about today the defensive preview for spring football. The spring football starts on the 22nd, which is next week, Jamie. It is next week, and we're going to be talking about defense. We did offense yesterday, so if you missed that show for whatever reason, you can find it in our YouTube channel, Irish Sports Daily YouTube channel. You can search Hit and Hustle. You can find it there. You can go to our podcast feed, which is on Apple and Spotify and Google and I signed up for a bunch of other ones. So if Amazon, you find it there. There's links.
All of the platforms.
The platforms, wherever you find your podcast, Jamie. You can find it, links in the description below for that as well. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And if you like what you hear, this is your first time, hit the like button, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. S. Gomez is here, of course. Yesterday he was late, but that's fine. No problem. Good morning. Let's go. Hit and Hustle on back-to-back days. Thank you for being here, S. Gomez. And Jamie.
Have you also give us those 5-star reviews on
5-star reviews, rate and
review.
review. We're so many places now, Jamie. I forget to plug everything. 5-star reviews.
Apple, Spotify, give us those 5-star reviews.
Yeah. Review the show. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like, but still give us a 5-star review. Right? That's what we want. So, Jamie, have you filled out a bracket? Have you filled out?
Of course
bracket?
I have.
Have you done for both men and women, Jamie?
I didn't do women this year because I might just do it just to do it because of just to fill one out on ESPN. But last year, I was in a pool, and that they aren't running that pool this year. So, but I still want to do a bracket for the women. So I think I'll probably still do one anyways. But I got to get it in quick.
Yep. Speaking of the women, a big announcement today. Olivia Miles, a point guard for the Notre Dame women's basketball team, out for the rest of the year with a knee injury, undisclosed knee injury, announced by Niall Ivy today. She said she's going to be having surgery soon and hopes to be back for the summer, which, it being March, tells me that it's not like an ACL, one of those big, a big injury like that, which is good to hear, right? I don't want to speculate too much on what the injury might be. There are some people who, the length of time that they think she might be back, which is the summer, to do summer workouts. That could be indicative, but doesn't really matter. She's out for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
Huge blow to the team. Really hurts their chances. They were already out Dara Mabry, who tore her ACL earlier in the year. So that's tough. That's tough. A lot of the scoring load will fall on Sonia Citron, who reminds me a lot of the a young Kobe Bryant in terms of great two-way player, right? More of a shooting guard, not the greatest ball handler. Is going to have to take over ball handling responsibilities from Olivia Miles. And she, the way that she, stepped up against Louisville to win the ACC on the road after Olivia Miles went down. She scored, I think it was 23 points. It was just a huge second half performance from her. That reminded me of Kobe Bryant in the 2000 finals against the Pacers, Jamie, game 4. Oh, it'll burn in my memory forever. So, but without your main ball handler, it's tough. It's tough. S. Dinger 68 says, how far do you see the ladies going without, I assume without Miles? It's tough, man, because they are. I don't follow women's basketball. I don't follow college basketball, period. We can get into that in a second, but I don't follow women's basketball that closely. I do understand that South Carolina is a juggernaut, or at least seen as a juggernaut, and so they are in South Carolina's bracket. So since they're on their side of the bracket, if they get to the Elite Eight,
to see them,
that they'll probably see them there. And if you're going to be without two of your best players, and arguably your best overall player in Olivia Miles, I don't see that happening. So I think an Elite Eight appearance would be considered successful for the women this year. But good luck to them. They kick off tomorrow against Southern Utah, I believe it is. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Southern something. Yeah. In South Bend at 3:30 Eastern time. So hopefully a lot of people go out there, and it's a big crowd and it's very lively and that sort of thing. So hopefully that can be a good scene there, Jamie. But I don't. I don't know anything about. So I filled out a men's bracket. I don't know anything about it. Zero clue. Didn't know who the one seeds were.
Didn't follow it much this year.
And you know what, Jamie? That's a damn shame because, and I believe you and Mike talked about this on Power Hour, which is every Monday for everyone who a lot of people already follow Power Hour. It's been going on for a long time, but it's every Monday morning. Jamie and Mike, and since it's the off season, Matt Freeman, you're gonna want to check that out. It's you guys talked about it. College basketball used to be the biggest thing, like mid '90s, early '90s, like when we were growing up and we became teenagers and that sort of thing. The Fab Five, I had Fab Five shorts, right? I wanted the baggy shorts. I wanted the black socks. It was a whole thing, man. I love college basketball. I sought out games Tuesdays, Thursdays. I followed all those North Carolina teams like Rasheed Wallace, Jerry Stackhouse teams with Donald Williams and all those guys, Jeff McGinnis, Dante Calabria, Jamie. It was a great time. UNLV running Rebels, Stacey Augman, Larry Johnson. It was a great time.
Greg Anthony.
Was great. Greg Anthony. It was great, man. It was awesome. I couldn't name 5 college basketball players right now. I literally could not. And I follow every sport, and it's just it's ridiculous, and it makes me sad, Jamie. It makes me sad. Like I would not today. Like I wouldn't consider because it's like, oh, you got to call in sick for the March Madness days, right? Like you can't miss it. I would never consider doing that now. Never.
No, but yeah, before you would, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be really into college basketball when I was growing up. Like I bought college football or college basketball preview magazines.
Yeah.
I was like would look forward to like those Sports Illustrated issues where they'd be like, I remember like them featuring Rasheed Wallace when he was like playing high school in Philly or whatever, like all of that. Like, I believe he's Philly. I think he's a Philly guy. I don't want to screw that up just in case, but like I remember like all of these guys that I was like really, really into. And I mean, all that era that you just said, that was like my era of guys where I used to go and like pretend I was college basketball players, not go when I play hoops. I wouldn't pretend I was NBA guys. I would pretend I was college basketball players. And that just, it's gone, right? I mean, obviously it's been gone for like a long time. And saying that, I still enjoy the tournament. I know our guy Matt Freeman, still big Gonzaga guy, like loves college basketball. Christian McCollum loves college basketball. Still really into it. Probably because he's probably gambling a lot of money on it. But yeah, I just think that it's not. It's just not the same that it was. And where I think as soon as guys could go straight from high school to the pros, or started doing it, because you could have done it that whole time, I guess, but they didn't. But as soon as like Kevin Garnett went, and then that kind of started the dominoes, and then it became so obvious that it was like guys were just one and done.
Yeah.
It did change it because you just all of a sudden you weren't paying attention to who's this guy going to sign with. You were just paying attention to, oh, this guy's the next NBA guy, right? Like, and basically now, like all I concentrate on is like, oh, Wembanyama, right? Like Wembanyama, like that's all. Like I'm like looking up things on Twitter of the highlights for him. And I can't. I'm sorry that the name escapes me for the guy who's the second guy, but he's in the G League, right? Like, that's the next best guy's in the G League. He's not playing college basketball, so I don't know. It's just, and even like as fun as it is when like say Zion had his Duke 1 year run, like that was super exciting. It's just not the same. It's not the same, and it would be great if there ever was like a possibility, if you're like, oh, Zion's coming back. Like there was that, but it's never a possibility.
Yeah.
It's never a possibility. So it's almost like before where I mean, college basketball is clearly like a farm system for, or college football is clearly a farm system for the NFL.
Mm.
And it's, because guys have to stay 3 years and you get to see that build up. And then there's a lot of guys too that you think that might even stay 3 years that end up staying a fourth year or a fifth year or whatever. And now with college basketball, it's just so obvious the top guys are never gonna stay. And you're never gonna get a guy who's even gonna be like a lottery pick who stays like that. Not to be like, I want to be the number one pick. That doesn't happen. They're just out. And I don't blame them. Like that's what happens, but just it'll never be the same.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I miss it. I mean, to be clear, like if something had to drop out, I guess something could, right? I have 3 kids now, like you have a son. There's not as much time in the day to be like watching things all the time. Like even the Lakers, I'm a big Laker guy. I always have been since I was like 9. But like YouTube TV doesn't get the Laker channel out here. So like I miss a ton of Lakers games. It's like, all right, well, it is what it is, right? Like, so and that's college basketball for me. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. All right. On to the topic of the day for Notre Dame football. We're going to talk about the defensive preview. Once again, we did the offense yesterday. If you want to check it out, go podcast, go to the YouTube channel. All right, Jamie. So last year, it's interesting just as an overview and kind of closing up last year and going into this year. When it was rumored that, or not rumored, reported, I should say reported, that there was some interest in Al Golden from NFL teams. I think when the Bengals defensive coordinator was a Notre Dame, says morning bros. What's up, Notre Dame? When the defensive coordinator for the Bengals was a finalist for the Arizona coaching job. It was thought that if he got that job, then Al Golden was going to be his defensive coordinator, right? That was a really good chance of that. Or he was going to coach linebackers there or something. And he didn't get that job, so that didn't open up and that didn't happen. But there was also Matt Freeman talked about, I think it was the Eagles who also looked at him for a defensive post. And that didn't happen. But the sentiment around that was like, good, like, fine, great. Al Golden, Notre Dame can do better, right? Notre Dame can do a better job than Al Golden did. People aren't really fired up about him. People aren't fired up about the defense and that sort of thing. And it is interesting because he would be, if he was to move on, he would be getting defensive coordinator positions in the NFL, right? You would say, hey, our defensive coordinator has interest from NFL teams as a defensive coordinator, right? Like, so that's a move up, right? Like if Tommy Rees was hired to be the offensive coordinator for, the Cardinals or the Eagles or something, that people would be like, hey, that's a step up, right? Like there's no lateral move talk there. But that's not the case for Al Golden. Like, why do you think that is? Why is that, JB? Why are people kind of cool with the concept of Al Golden moving on to do whatever? Why do you think that is?
I mean, because I think the defense was good last year, but not great. And frankly, they were bad in the red zone. And that, like, to be dead last in any category, and I understand they were really good in a lot of other categories.
Yeah.
But to be dead last,
it was such a theme too. It was everyone talked about it. It was like before every game. It was they. If they're in the red zone, they're going to score a touchdown, and then it just kept getting reinforced over and over again because it was over and over. So that's a good point there.
Yeah, and so they were. So they won 31st out of red zone touchdown percentage.
131 teams.
I mean, there's 131 teams, right? Like it's bad. It's bad. It's not ideal. So I think so that's part of it. And then the other part is that the linebackers weren't great.
Yeah.
And that's just and it is what it is. And I think it's so. And people ask, especially on IC Sport, they'll ask me like, so is Al Golden a bad linebacker coach? And I'm like, I mean, he clearly isn't, because he is getting interviewed to coach linebackers at the NFL level, and he coached linebackers for the Cincinnati Bengals and did a great job. Like, they were very good. They were very good there. So clearly knows how to coach the position. So I think it's, you have to look at all of like the context that goes with it. I mean, and also I think, overall, if you look at like kind of where they're at, um, in terms of like their scoring, they were 13th in echo rate and 10th in total red zone attempts. So they weren't letting people in the red
Right,
zone. And
right.
echo rate is productive drive. So it's basically in giving up a drive that someone has a first down inside of your 40-yard line, right? So basically that they have like a scoring opportunity, right? Like
Mhm.
it's like a very good chance they're going to have at least a field goal attempt out of that. And Notre Dame's 13th in the country, and that's good. That's why the points were down, and they
Right.
were like, I think they were
Tw- twen-
22nd or whatever.
22 points a game.
Yeah, and I think they were 22nd in points per drive, which is like takes out all of like garbage time. It takes out
Yeah.
you know uh, eh, FCS competition and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's good. And I mean, certainly the echo rate's good, but it's not great. And the havoc rate wasn't great. So it's like, is that just the play? So there's a question. It's like, is this the talent? Is this Golden himself? They didn't stop the run that well. I
Yeah.
know statistically it doesn't look terrible, but some of the other like the EPA numbers, like expected points added numbers, are bad. Like that's bad. And I think just if you watch them like we watch them every week, you would say situationally they weren't great at stopping the run,
Yeah.
right? They weren't.
And there's an
Um,
eye test element too, I think,
yes,
where it's like BYU, terrible running team. And it's like they ran for 130, it's like 134 yards, right? Like whatever. Or the running back ran for 100. It's like, it's not huge, but it's like,
yeah,
why they can't run on anyone? Why are they running on us?
yeah,
So that's what I think there's an eye test element as well.
yeah. And I think Notre Dame brings up the good point. This is the other point, right? Where um, against South Carolina, and the offense was the problem for Notre Dame last year,
Yes.
right? Like there was many times in many games they were a below average offense, right?
Hmm.
Um, and even though their identity is running the ball, whatever, they weren't like consistent at that all year. And the beginning, if you look at say Stanford and Marshall are the two
Hmm.
games that are like, I mean, win those games and Notre Dame is, wins 11 games. Like that's obviously a lot different than 9-4. And the defense showed up in those games. The defense played well in those games. So you kind of have to look at it from that perspective too. I think Al Golden did a pretty good job. And he did do a good job, like I think situationally, like the defense did a lot of the things that you saw under Clark Lee in terms of like, and Marcus Freeman, right? Where they responded well under adversity, right? They
Hmm.
did like a sudden change opportunity. I mean, other than the one play against like Cal, where they gave up the one play action touchdown, I can't really remember like a sudden change thing where they got really burned right away. I just remember them more like getting a 3-and-out after like, when they needed it. That happened a lot with Notre
Yeah.
Dame's defense. So um, I think people just kind of see the bad, and they also they just know they know how the good they had it with Clark Lee, and they know that Marcus Freeman's defense ended up playing like really well too.
Hmm.
Um, but I think you have to look at it like the talent is not the same as it was, especially in those early Clark Lee years, right? Like they don't have that same number thing. And I think even this year, um, like defensive tackle wise, defensive line wise, there's a lot of transition there, right? And you have to have guys step up, and they're just not as deep as they would have been, and they're kind of built to be a more talented defense in 2024, 2025 than they are now, because a lot of like the blue chip talent is in the younger underclassmen on the team. So um, I don't know. It's going to be interesting because I think like Notre Dame has a chance to have a good defense this year. Um, I don't know what the ceiling is though. Like I don't see them being a top 10 defense. I think they should, no doubt, they should be a top 20 defense every year. But
Right.
I
Right.
don't know if, I mean, he has to like coach his butt off for them to be a top 10 defense.
Right. All right. So let's get into why that is. Why? And we'll start with the defensive line too, because I think that this is where there's a lot of questions on the defensive line. there's a lot of numbers too, and there's a lot of possibilities, but you don't have the Isaiah Foskey aspect. You don't have the Jason Adamilola aspect. You don't have the even the Justin Adamilola aspect where it's like you kind of know what you're getting there. There's a baseline. There's a baseline level of play that you're going to get. People saw Foskey as a possible first round pick, right? And that didn't come to fruition. That's another reason why it's like you didn't get the most out of what you think your star player is, and that was another reason why. But he's not on the team.
Well, I mean, you got double-digit sacks 2 years in a row.
No, but it's just the perception, right? And so there's that, and again, there's also the eye test piece where it's just like
he wasn't a dominant player, and we mentioned before that, like, say Aquara didn't have the same number of sacks, but he was better than Boston.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he's out, and so now you have Jordan Botelho, who we've talked about a number of times, where it's like we expect. I don't want to say expect that we realize there is a possibility, and you have even predicted that Jordan Botelho is going to have a huge season because of his numbers, right? His numbers are in terms of pressures per snap, right? And havoc plays and that sort of thing. I mean, he was very productive in very limited snaps last year. The numbers are what they are, right? And he's always been a fairly productive player. Whenever he's on the field, he's done it. It's just like he can't stay on the field, right? So this is a huge prove it year for him. So he's one. You have young and up and coming players. I'm just speaking of defensive ends now. In Josh Burnham, what can you get out of him? Aiden Gabayra, what can you get out of him? On the other side, you have Nana Osafo-Mensah, who is interesting to me in terms of, I think that the way that he is carrying himself, the way that he is presenting himself to the team, the way that the school is presenting him to the fans, to us, it's as though he is a more proven player than he is. And maybe there's something there, right? I don't think that anyone would really predict like who's going to be a hot take, right? We do hot take shows. No one's going to say Nana Osafo-Mensah like 8-9 sacks, right? No one says that. But it just seems to me like it's going to be his senior year. He is taking that role as like, I'm going to be a leader on this team. I am going to be someone like an Ade Ogundeji or someone like a Dalen Hayes. I don't think he has that physical upside of those guys. I don't. But it just seems like he's kind of taken on that role. And so I don't know what to make of him, right? I don't know what to think about that. That's something that I'm going to monitor this spring. Like, do we keep hearing his name? Does his name keep popping up? It's like, it looks good. Nana Osafo-Mensah. It looks good. Nana Osafo-Mensah. I just think there's something there to monitor, Jamie. What do you think about this line? What do you think about what I just said about Nana Osafo-Mensah? Guys you're looking for, on and
on. I guess
I gave you a lot there. I apologize.
Yeah, no. I mean, I love talking D-line. I do.
Yeah.
I love, like, I mean, I love the upside of Botelho. And I know that Foskey was very complimentary of him, like very, very complimentary of him. And I think it's something we talked about with True Men Talk on the show, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was last week, but after the combine, and he talked about him. And like you said, his pressure numbers, it's a small sample size, but over that period of time are elite. So if you kind of mix that together, I think he can have a big year. And so if I'm looking at it from like a third down pass rush perspective, I think, Javonte Jean-Baptiste too, if you add in his pressure numbers and you put them over a course of a guy who's giving starter reps, that would be a pretty darn good too. So I think he's a guy who I'm excited to see. I don't know about him as a run defender. I think he's a great chase player. I don't think he's a great player at the point of attack from what I've seen of him. So I'm interested to kind of see that. But I think his pass rush potential is through the roof. Like, I think he's got NFL potential. And really, like, at end, so I think Osafo-Mensah's kind of getting some of that love because he's played. And one thing, he is definitely improved.
Yeah.
Absolutely improved. Is a good run defender. He's good at setting the edge. He is good at the point of attack. He's just solid. He's just solid across the board. the problem is he isn't a guy who has shown that he can rush the passer. He just hasn't. He has not been a guy that gets a ton of pressures. He's got 2 sacks in his career. I think he's got like 3.5 tackles for loss. That's his career total. So not a lot of havoc plays, not a lot of playmaking from him. So that's why it's hard to see someone like that. So we're like, say with Ogundeji, when he had that big jump, in his last year, well, he had that run towards the end of the previous season after Aquara and Hayes and all those guys went out. He had I think in his last 4 games he had 7.5 tackles for loss. He had 3 strip sacks. He was making plays, making a ton of plays, and so you could kind of see that potential there. And then he ended up playing really well as a senior, and I just haven't seen that from Nana yet, and I don't know if that. So I don't know if that's in him. So he could surprise. I know that Douglas Farmer, who writes for NBC Sports, he's a guy who's thinks that he can do that, and I just haven't seen it from him yet. I got to see more from him. So I mean, he'd be a guy. I think to me, it'd be a pleasant surprise if he does. We hear some of that from him this spring. I'm just counting on him to kind of be more of a rotation guy.
Yeah.
And then I don't think he'll. It's tough to see him as a starter because I just haven't seen enough of the pass rush part of it, and it's why I think John Baptiste is got a better chance to kind of step ahead of him there. And then really I think Josh Burnham, Aiden Gobara, those guys. I mean, I'm excited to see those guys and where they're at. I'm excited to see when they release the weights for those guys and where they're at from that perspective. I've heard good things about them, but still I think there's certainly defensive line, much like offensive line too. It's just it's a man's game, right? You have to really be physically advanced to be able to compete on down in a down out level. And you saw the difference between a guys like Julian Okwara and what every year did for him as he changed and he became a better player. And it's just, and also that's technical and all that kind of stuff too, in terms of hand placement, setting the edge and all that kind of stuff. So I'm interested to kind of see where those guys are at. Cause I think if people are expecting those guys to have make huge jumps, it could happen, but it's not likely. That's just not how it typically works, even for guys who were 4-star prospects. And you also have to remember, Burnham was a high school linebacker and a high school quarterback. So it's a different game. It's a totally different game. And so all this stuff, everything, it's he is just a blank slate and everything is just being built up from there. And hopefully he built up enough during his redshirt year and we see something from here. But he's someone that I could even see maybe flashing a bit in the spring, and then all of a sudden in the summer, you're like, oh, he took another step. That's the kind of thing where you're at. And the interesting thing to me is, inside, I don't Mills is definitely going to move inside. He played inside in the bowl game.
Yeah.
And then there's Cross, and Cross I think has to play one tech. He has to, because I don't think it's going to be him and Rubio, and maybe he play a little bit of 3 tech. And also because I think they're hoping that a guy like Tyson Ford steps up and is able to get in the rotation as a 3 tech. And I know they're high on him and his talent, but it's also he's making an adjustment. It's all these guys basically. So Riley Mills, much like every defensive lineman that was ever born, he wants to have Isaiah Foskey's job,
And he wants to be a defensive end. He wants to rush faster.
And Isaiah Foskey probably wanted to be a Mike linebacker. That's how it goes, right? And the safety wants to play outside and play corner and so on and so forth, right? That's usually how it is. So it's an adjustment because he's a guy who played outside and he's playing inside. So it's more about I think I'd see him really flashing as a pass rusher. but how's he going to hold up against a run when he's doing it? So you want to see some of those battles with him inside. And they just don't got a lot of depth there. So they can't really have like any injuries. Like if there's an injury to Cross, like how there was last year, and that definitely hurt Notre Dame, there isn't like a Chris Smith to kind of just like, okay, he can kind of be like, plug the gap here for you while you're doing it. They don't have that. So I do wonder if in May, depending on maybe how the spring goes, if they're looking in the portal for somebody that they can get. I mean, let's be honest, Notre Dame needs a Lewis Nix war daddy type that they can just plug in there. And I don't know. I don't know. I mean, those guys just aren't readily available, but that's what they need.
Notre Dame hit the like button and lost a calorie. I mean, watch the show, hit the like button, lose calories. I think that's the best way to look at it. So here's the thing. What I don't understand why Notre Dame doesn't just show Riley Mills like tape of Jerry Tillery and be like, why don't you want to be this? Why is this bad? Why is this a bad outcome? 28th pick. Please be like this guy. They're built the same. Yeah. They're not like they're both big guys. I think Jerry Tillery might be a
physically very similar.
Very similar. I think Tillery might be a slightly better athlete than Riley Mills, but I don't know that. They might just be completely similar in that regard. And Tillery just changing his mindset. It's like, I'm going to be, and he always played inside, but it's like, I'm going to be a playmaker on the inside. Like that, it just completely changed his career. First round pick, 28th pick. It's just like, so that to me, it's like such an easy sell. And the other part too is, Jacob Lacey was made to feel for whatever reason, like he was expendable, and off to Oklahoma he goes, right? Inside player. I have to believe that they have faith in Gabriel Rubio, in Tyson Ford, in Carolina. Like there were rumors about him. What's that situation, right? Like I don't understand how we're sitting here talking about Howard Cross being a 1, which I agree with you on. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying I don't understand how we're talking about that. And there's rumors
how they have to count on him. Yeah.
Aiden Kana might not have a role on this roster. Like, what are we talking about? What's going on here? I don't like Rubio and Aiden Kana. Like, get those guys going, man. They got to get ready to go because this Howard Cross thing, he needs to be a 3 technique. He needs to. Their whole job this spring for the defensive line, get a 1, 2 1s, get 2 1s that you can play. Because if you need to, then you slide Howard Cross over in an emergency. I can't. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about Howard Cross because this is what the spring is for. It's what it's for. You can put him over there. Yeah. You can. So don't even rep him there in the spring. Keep him over at the 3. Have him do that. Shoot, put Riley Mills at the 1. Because Jerry Tillery did that. Do that before you put Howard Cross in there because he physically cannot he cannot be big enough. And his game is good enough, and he's a good enough player to where he can do it. But you shouldn't have him over there. You really shouldn't.
Well, I just don't think it's not even that he can't be as solid there. It's just I think he can.
You're wasting him.
I think he could be really good.
It's like Jason Adamilola. Why don't you put him at the 1? Yeah. Because he's a better 3. Yeah. That's what he does. So I think that's what needs to happen there. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I think is a huge X factor. He's almost like a swing guy in terms of if he has a big year, this could be really good for Notre Dame on the defensive line, especially from a pass rush standpoint. And I think the good thing is that between him and Nana Osafo-Mensah, I mean, men, right? 5th year guys, been in college weight rooms for a long time, like men in there, right? Strong guys. And it's like for the younger guys to kind of have to deal with that. There's the unknown factor with Alex Ahrensberger, who, we've heard things, we haven't seen things, right? There's always rumblings about him, but there's never like where is it then, right? You don't really see it. So there's that.
I think so I would put Ahrensberger and Carolina in the same category because they just haven't played. And
well, Aiden got hurt. Carolina got hurt.
He got hurt, But at the same time, like, and this is also too whatever, and not to get on the big rant about like I wish we had more practice access, whatever.
Yeah.
But like we haven't had much, and some of it is because of COVID and stuff too. Why? But I mean, I would love to tell you, like, I don't know why this guy's not playing. He looks great. I, I mean, I've been to a lot of practices, and I don't think he's been healthy for one that
Yeah.
I've been to. Um, and so that's a problem. That's a problem because it's hard to establish yourself there. So that's probably why they don't really count on him doing anything. And I mean, he just might not be good.
Yeah.
He it might be because we just don't know. Aaronsberger, Aaronsberger was just like the classic. I mean, we should have mentioned Jason Anye in there too,
Yes.
because
Yes.
Anye I think actually has a chance to play. And
Do you think he's on the
Anye,
outside though?
no, he's inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's inside. But like Anye, um, but I mean, in the category of guys who haven't played and
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
been in
Yeah.
the program for a couple of years, right? Like Anye, I could see being in the rotation, and almost I think one because like Aaronsberger, I almost think would have had a better shot to play if he bulked up and got and played inside, but maybe he's just this is what he is. He's not going to be big enough to play, but he's got traits that are like this guy could maybe play in the league one day. He's just super long and he's got some twitch and whatever. He just when I see him, even when it's like garbage time, he is just inconsistent. He looks so raw still.
Yeah.
He looks so raw in terms of like, why did he get reached there? Like no reason he should have got reached there.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's just, I mean, and it's not enough to say you can't say he's new to football still. It's like, nah, he's played enough years now where especially he's been enough years in the program. So it's like, it really is like now or never. He's got to get into the rotation this year or else it's never happening. And he'll ride in the sunset. And
Yeah.
with Anye though, I thought last year, especially just the little bits we saw of him in practices, he really flashed in terms of just his effort and his motor. And I think that's, obviously a great sign. I want to see where he's at physically. Like, what does he weigh? If he's a guy, if like all of a sudden you're like, oh, Anye's like 298 or something like that. And I'm like, okay, that
Put
might
him
be
at the
interesting.
one.
Yeah, because he is, and he's a guy that I think because he is long, he's super long, he's different than, obviously a guy like, even like a guy like K&I, he's like much longer than him, and obviously much longer than Cross too.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden he becomes a guy, then that obviously changes the dynamic too. And I don't know, like I was not like a huge fan of Anye as a recruit. Like I thought he had like a really, really long way to go. I was kind of like questioning them taking him at the time. But I mean, and you know what? And sometimes those guys who are projects, sometimes they never turn out. But I think I saw enough where I'm like, this guy has a shot.
Yeah.
He has a shot. Like there's sometimes, whatever, without mentioning names, I've seen guys who Notre Dame has had on the defensive line that I was like, this guy's never going to play. Like,
Yeah.
and that's not the case with Andre. Like he's got a shot, and so he's a guy who's I think going to be really interesting to watch this spring.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to linebackers because there's like a swing player here. Junior Tuihalamaka. I don't know where to put him. They talk about him playing big end or Viper or whatever.
Viper, yeah.
Viper. I don't know what that is. I don't know what to make of that. I think he's a Mike. I don't know what they're doing. I really don't. I don't get it. He's not long. He's not tall. He's not like, I don't see him as being like a twitchy guy.
No.
I don't know what's going on there, but they play him there. It's not like he couldn't be good against the run because he's strong, right? He's got a good base. He's strong. He's got a really like thick legs.
Yeah.
So I could see it like from that front, but like, why would you do that? Why just keep him at Mike? Keep him Mike.
Yeah.
That's what he played. It's what he played in high school. So there's that. Obviously there's the JD Bertrand situation. He'll probably be a captain again. You've got Jack Kaiser, who I think a lot of people like. He was very productive in limited snaps last year. Marist is the big one, where it's like, where is he at? What is his situation? I think if you took Marist as his 2020 Marist, and you saw how he played in 2020 and saw how he played in 2022 without any of the preseason stuff from 2021, you would say that makes a lot of sense, because he was a flashy player in 20, inconsistent, right? Not a full-time player. And I think last year, as a first-time full-time player, you say, okay, like I kind of get that, right? Like he played not too dissimilar from 2020. I think 2021, the way that his camp was and the way people were talking about him, I think that kind of, shifted things on the way that people saw him as a player. But so it kind of doesn't really matter, because given what he was in 2022, like that's got to get a lot better in 2023. I think Prince Collie the idea of him is great. He did, frankly, even less than Marist in 2020. Like anyone, like I there's just not a lot of stuff at linebacker from Prince Collie where you're like, that's a budding star. It wasn't there, right? And maybe there's a learning curve there, and maybe whatever. I'm not giving up on him. I'm just saying, like, I think people wanted him.
I think people are putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, it's just like when he was in there, it's like, I don't know. There's snaps, but there's not really anything going on.
Yeah, some flashes, but it's just like, is this because if people are so frustrated with Marist? But I'm like, I want all those people to watch every Prince Collie rep.
Yeah, tell me. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's tough.
Yeah, because he looks lost on someplace. He does.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think he looks great as like a guy. If it's like it's like a green dog call and he's got to chase down a thing. He's a guy who can chase guys in space.
Yeah.
But Steve Filer could do that too, and he never became a guy.
Yeah.
So, and obviously he's making a transition because he was like essentially like a rover, like a safety hybrid guy in high school, and then he's still making that transition, and it's that's a different game being an inside linebacker, right? It's just a total different game.
There you go, Pops. Put it up for you.
And yeah.
So let's talk about other hybrid guy, because Jalen Sneed, another one where it's like used as a pass rusher in the bowl game, right? I haven't heard of him. I think they're going to keep him at rover. I think he's going to be there with Jack Kaiser. He's super interesting. Like that is one where it's like, if he makes the leap, because he looks like an athlete now. Like that guy, he really didn't know what he was doing in the bowl game, but man, he looked good. Like his body.
I mean, physically,
he looks long. He looks fast, twitchy, strong, all those things. Like he looks like all the things that you want. Does the light go on for him? Because if it does, now I think Notre Dame's really cooking with gas with him in that position and that sort of thing. Then you have kind of the other hybrid guys where it's like Nolan Ziegler, right? Like what does he look like coming after? I think he probably knew he was going to redshirt, but now it's like that's going to go away in his mind. No more of that stuff, right? No more redshirt stuff. I want to get on the field now. What does that look like for him? You have the early enrollees, Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury. Drake Bowen, I'm going to tell you right now, I think he's going to play. I think he's going to find a way to play. He finds a way to succeed in everything that he does. I just think he has the mentality for it. I think that he expects it. I think that it would be no thing to him if he was just like, yeah, I'll start games at middle linebacker. That's fine. Like, I don't think it would be any sort of surprise.
I don't think he's going to start games at middle linebacker.
No, but I'm just saying for him in his mind, I think that's what.
Yeah, no. He has that confidence. I think that thing it's important. It's important.
And I don't even think it's false confidence. I don't. I honestly think that he would not be impressed by it. He would just be like, yeah, I am. I don't think he's going to start. JD Bertrand is a good player. He has to. Yes. He would have to do so much to supplant him. In fact, it would probably take an injury. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, if something did happen to Bertrand, I don't know that and it depends when it is too. If it was like week 1, especially week 1 against Navy, but like week 2, week 3, they'd probably move Kaiser over or something like that, or maybe it would be Tuli Alamaka. But I just think Drake Bowen, man, I just think he's going to be in the middle. I think he's going to be like a 3-year starter. I think he's going to be great. So that's just, I guess I'm just throwing that out there. But so there's a lot there. But it's like, look, what are you going to do with this Will linebacker situation? It's the biggest, maybe the biggest question aside from like the one technique on the defense is like, Will, what's going on with those guys? How can they get them up to speed?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just say I'll agree with you on Bertrand. I think Mike, he's the Mike.
Yeah. It's not even a question.
I don't think it's a question. So the only question at Mike is who's the backup Mike, and because it was Jack Kaiser last year. Okay. So if he's going to be the backup Mike, or is Kaiser going to compete at the will? I imagine he's going to compete at the will. So as well. And that also makes the thing bringing your Tui Halamaka. Is he there? Whatever. But okay. We'll just go quick hitters on each of these guys. So Marist, I put it in 6 thoughts this morning. If you didn't know, he was outstanding in coverage last year. He gave up the lowest number of yards per reception out of any Power 5 linebacker. First.
That's good.
First is good.
Mm-hmm.
Lowest opposing passer rating out of any times he was targeted. First out of any Power 5. First is pretty good. So
first is good.
He is pretty good. So I think when people say like, get this guy out of here, there's a reason he was still in there, because he was doing one thing, an important thing at a very high level. I'm not saying he doesn't have to get better. You want to see more playmaking and all that. Yes. I think that needs to kind of happen, and they need that, or else he becomes more of a sub package guy. And then that's that. So that's the kind of question with him. To me, Cauley, like, he obviously has talent, athletic talent. It is kind of like, I would compare it to Asmar Bilal, where it was clear that with Asmar, there was something there that he just wasn't, it didn't all click for him until it did. And then when it did, he was very good. Yes. And but that was like the 5th year, basically, for it. And I would say he was solid as the rover in the 4th year, but you just really saw it in that 5th year as an inside linebacker, where you never saw that before. So Cauley, I think, has, I would say, even more athletic potential than Asmar. So, can that happen for him? That's the big question for him. Jalen Sneed, yes, looks fantastic. But what does he weigh? Where does he fit? Like, if he comes in and he's like 216 pounds, like, okay, like, then he can't really play inside. So does that mean they're going to play him at rover? Are they actually going to play with a rover? Like, where does he fit? Is he just going to be this like chess piece guy? Is he going to be just a sub package guy? I mean, I think he's got to play. He's too talented. He's too talented. He's got to play. But I don't know if he's good enough, or like if he's a fit to be like the starter at will or whatever. I don't know, right? So that's what you got to kind of find out with him. Nolan Ziegler, heard really good stuff about him. Really, really good stuff about him. I think he's going to be a guy who helps Notre Dame on special teams this year for sure. Maybe a guy who kind of sneaks in and competes at that will linebacker spot. Also, he's a guy who was a safety in high school. Is he like a rover type? But he has those same kind of Drew Tranquil kind of like qualities in terms of like, I think he can be a really, really strong coverage linebacker. And he's just an instinctive, tough kid. Like so I'm excited to see him. Osbury, I think he needs some time probably, I think, to get physically there, because he's smaller, right? But he's fast. He's going to be fast, and I'm excited to kind of see where he's at. And with Bowen, my always thing with him is I thought he got too big for his last year of high school in terms of like, I mean, he put on a lot of weight from like his junior year to his senior year. And maybe 30 pounds isn't that big of a thing if you're like a D lineman or an O lineman, but 30 pounds or whatever it was, or close to that, 20 to 30 pounds for a linebacker is a lot. And I think that like So what does he weigh? If he's like 235, I think that's like too big for
Mm,
him. I would like to see him 225 and stick, and he can just gradually, whatever. If he ends up at 235 by the time he leaves Notre Dame, fine. But I don't want to see him at like that 225 range, see him running around. And I mean, I definitely think he'll play on special teams and stuff this year, and we'll kind of see. But I think so. Like Pops McGee brought up, Pops McGee brought up what everyone has said about the linebackers, pretty much. Any like Notre Dame fan, Snead and Cully, get them out there.
yeah.
They need because you see the athleticism and whatever. But I mean, I always just temper it with like Steve Eiler, like because that's like, I mean, there's Jalen Smith athleticism combined with instincts and
Yeah.
all of this like just all natural talent that he has,
Just
just
being a good
football
player.
intelligence, whatever, right? That he can just, and then there's everybody else. You know what I mean? Because you know, and maybe Snead is that Jalen Smith. I don't know. But the thing is, I don't know that yet. And with Coley, I haven't seen that yet. So he's still got a lot he's still got a lot to kind of show me. So I think this is a huge show me spring for Coley. I mean, obviously Maris, it's a huge show me spring for him too.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish it off with secondary, the greatest position on the field. So a corner, I think it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty straightforward as far as you know who the players are. You know who's going to be playing a big role. Obviously, Ben Morrison, Cam Hart. Still not sure what that situation is, but like that, he doesn't really have a show me, prove it kind of spring. If he does, I mean, that would be awesome. I just think it's a great spring for him to go up against like guys like, especially playing the field. He's going up against Tobias Merriweather a lot. I think it'd be good for him. I think that'd be good for Tobias. I think that'd be good for Deion Colsley and all those guys. So I think that would be great. Ben Morrison against Caleb Smith all year or all spring is going to be fantastic. I think that's going to be a great matchup. Good for both of those guys. Clarence Lewis, obviously very experienced. I think we know what Clarence Lewis is. I thought he had a good year last year. I thought he had a bit of a bounce back from the way that 2021 ended, which is good to see. He gave up some stuff, but he also he made some plays on the ball. So I think he was a lot better than I think people probably just
People
him.
remember the bad plays.
Yeah, I think
that's the life of a corner.
Right. I think he had a much better year last year. Jed Mickey had a rough, obviously a rough end of the year. But I just think too much too soon for him. I obviously I'm not giving up or anything like that. It's just it happens sometimes. So obviously it's a big spring for him in terms of what he can do there. Christian Gray, very exciting to see him out there. I think a lot of people expect a lot of things. And see him as someone who could push for time if he proves himself. And so there's the Ryan Barnes, Philip Riley guys. To me, it's just it's beyond the point of big spring for them. I think it's beyond that. They did not make the travel roster at the end of last year, right? I mean, look, maybe right, maybe they something happens and they look good or sound good and we're hearing good things. Maybe, I mean, that's the ultimate prove it situation. Like people were talking about Ryan Barnes last spring. It's like, oh, he's the backup on the boundary, right? And then he never gets in the game. So it's just like it's not even prove it.
Yeah.
It's just hard to envision. One person I am very intrigued by, and I'm going to be monitoring very closely is Chance Tucker. I think there's something there, Jamie.
I've always liked Chance Tucker.
I think there's something there, and maybe it's a California thing with me. Is SoCal guy, went to Crespi. I just think that I think he's long. I think he's fast. He's got pretty good size, Jamie. And he was a guy who was he always traveled. They always brought him. And of all those guys who didn't, they always brought him. I think there's something there. I'm hoping for some very positive things from Chance Tucker in this spring. I think for him, of the guys who haven't really played at corner from that 2020 class. I think he's the one where it's like I think there's something there, and I hope that comes to fruition. Do you have anything to say about the corners or anything I said there?
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised if Hart participates.
I would be surprised too.
Yeah. So I think, that gives a guy like Tucker, he'll probably get some reps. Because of that, right? And I think obviously Mickey's going to be a guy who gets a ton of reps too there, and he'll get a chance there. And I'm excited to see Jaden Mickey this spring. Really excited to see him. I think I'm excited to see Ben Morrison. Like, I want to hear that he's having a dominant spring, right? That's what I want to hear about him. Who's going to play the nickel? Who's going to play the nickel? Is that going to be Thomas Harper, who's obviously came in from as safety? I'm not even sure if he's going to be fully healthy in the spring because he had that shoulder thing or whatever. But I'm not 100% if he's going to be or not. I can't remember if he said he was.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't recall. But but is that going to be like Mickey? Is maybe like a Tucker? Maybe that's James or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm with you on Tucker too. I don't know that like whatever, but I think he has a shot because
I do too. I do.
One, I just think corner. What's the first thing the box you have to check? Can you run? Yes, he can run. He's fast. He's fast enough to play the position, and he's also a guy who came into it late. So he didn't play corner until I believe like his junior year of high school. So he's someone who's not, didn't come in with polish like some of these other guys. So it's going to be more of a transition for him. I think he has a chance to be there. And I would agree with I think Clarence Lewis will be interesting because, I mean, it's not like you need to hear a lot about Clarence Lewis. You kind of know what he is. Yeah. You know what he is. And he's a good player. He is a good player in his having that limited role was perfect for him because I thought it made him better. I mean, the fact that he's having to play like 70 plays a game and play with against the top boundary receivers, it just wasn't going to be good for him, right? And it wasn't going to be good for Notre Dame, but they didn't have any other choice. They just had to do it. So, I mean, my only question with him is, would they take a look at him in safety? Because that they might have to. And I think Barnes probably is going to be a safety. I think he took some reps there last year. And then Riley, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if he wasn't there in the spring because he didn't travel to the bowl game, and everybody traveled to the bowl game. So, I don't know. But I do think there's a lot of options there, and especially if you think, I mean, we didn't mention Chris. Did you mention Christian Gray? I'm sorry if you
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, Christian Gray. I think Christian Gray is going to be a guy who people talk about this spring. So. I mean, I like the situation at corner, and especially if they can get Chance Tucker going, then I'll love it.
Yeah, then you love it, right? Then you're then you're really got something. It's gonna be it should be a really good group. It should be a really good group. And kudos to Mike Mickens, man. I've personally been just kind of lukewarm. You know what? I was lukewarm on him the way people are lukewarm around Chris O'Leary right now, and we can talk about safeties too. I think losing Brandon Hillman has really has people wow, is Chris O'Leary actually good? It's like
that literally had nothing.
The Brandon Hillman thing had literally nothing to do with Chris O'Leary, nothing. And so, in fact, it was almost like a good thing, right? It turned a positive thing that he did into discussion about whether he's actually bad. And I don't mind that. We can have that discussion. That's fine. I just don't. If you weren't talking about Chris O'Leary before, you shouldn't be talking about him now. So it's that's the way it is. But transitioning to the safeties, I think Thomas Harper was a big coup for them in terms of a guy they know that can play the position and he can play nickel, swing player there, very important. I think that was big. To me, a lot comes down to Xavier Watts. Yeah, I think I love his game. I've loved his game pretty much since he started playing that position. And the end of last year, I thought he made strides in terms of being a playmaker. Does that manifest itself into creating turnovers? That's the final step. That's the
Yeah.
final step. I don't know what kind of athlete he is as far as range and that sort of thing. I think we've seen some positives, but it's like, are you an NFL player? That's the question. That is like, are you an NFL player with your range and your physical ability? And I think that's what will be kind of borne out, right? I think he will go into this spring as the presumptive starter, which I think is an important thing for him because it's different, right? You go into any sort of spring or fall or whatever. It's like I'm trying to carve out a role for myself. I want to be a regular player. Okay, mentally that's different than I am the leader of this secondary. I am the safety in the back, right? It's different, right? It carries different expectations in your mind going into every practice. Players look at you differently. The coaches look at you differently. It's just a different thing. I want to see how he handles that. Hopefully, he handles it great, right? I don't want to say one way or the other. I don't know. I think Ramon Henderson. I think he's another one where it's like consistency. It's got to be good day after day. Day after day. He's had flashes. He had his pick against Virginia is the best thing a non-Kyle Hamilton safety has done in a bit. A bit. I mean, I guess some Alohi Gilman did a lot of good stuff, but I mean, that's the range on that
I
play.
mean,
It's just
in
really
between
impressive.
Gilman to him, yeah, that was.
Yeah, I mean, that's really impressive. It was a really impressive play, but there's a lot of mistakes there. A lot of just like mental errors, a lot of like your eyes are in the bad spot. Your eye discipline is not very good. Like, there's a lot of, like that's got to get cleaned up.
He looks
there.
like a guy who's new to the position, which he kind of is, right?
Yeah, and that's fine. And then DJ Brown, right, is the consummate. You know where he's going to be. He's like a rich man's version of a rich man's. Well, I'll say maybe a poor man's Jalen Elliott. Maybe I'll say that he doesn't. Well, I don't know. Actually, now that I think about it, they're pretty similar because Jalen Elliott had the interceptions in 2018. And DJ Brown's got some picks in his career. He's got some drops too. So I think that it's a solid group. What's the ceiling there? I don't know what it is. That kind of is up to Watts and up to a guy like Henderson, but it's a solid group. I don't expect them to be any sort of liability in the year, but those are the things I'm looking for in the spring. Oh, and I should mention that Don Schuler is on campus now. Ben Minnick is on campus now. And then Justin Walters is another one where it's like, he plays great. He's had great springs. I'll give him that. Great springs for
he
Justin
shows
Walters.
up on the highlight.
Yeah, but he's never on the field. So I don't know what to say. But anyway, what do you have to say, Jamie?
Yeah, I think Walters, everything I've heard about him is that it's coverage-wise, he struggles.
Yeah.
I think physically and mentally, probably, he's just not there. And I mean, the main thing on safety is like, you don't want the other team's band to play. So if you do that, like, I mean, then you can't play. Even though he's a guy I think can be a downhill player. Like, he's almost like a linebacker, but in a DB's body, unfortunately. Speaking of that, like X Watts, I think that's the one thing he has proven. I think he does have over. It's like about a year and a half, but still, like he hasn't played a lot. So sorry, Garland Doxey said Watts doesn't have even a full year safety under his belt. He will be a dog.
He played it in 21.
Yeah. So I think if he continues to improve from the guy he was in the last like third of the season, I mean, then he's going to be great for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And the main thing I think is I thought he made a big step in coverage over that time, but he is a great player versus the run and versus the perimeter game. Like, just some guys have it. Yeah. Some guys know what angles to take there. They know they can tackle guys in space. They can come down hill and they're going to hit through guys. And that is X Watts. X Watts, by the way, fifth in, where is it? Fifth best run stop percentage out of Power 5 safeties last year. Yeah. Not bad. He's a very good run defender. He's a very good runner, very good tackler. So if he continues to do that one thing at an elite level and then continues to get better in coverage, I mean, he doesn't have to be elite in coverage, but he's just like continually better, then, I mean, that's going to be really good. Henderson is a huge key there because he's got to take a step, or else, I mean, or else he's just going to be a guy who fills a role, because he's not a guy that I think playing at the level that he did last year. That's not a starter level. He can't play. He can't play at that level. So he needs a big spring. I mean, DJ Brown, like you said, you know where you're going to get out of him. At the very least, he can start and whatever. At the same time, you know what you're going to get out of him. So it's like,
yeah,
is there someone there? So that's like, is Harper there? Can one of these freshmen, actually, I mean, Adon Schuler's not going to hit at all. He's not going to do any contact. But is he a guy who can maybe help in the fall? I think physically he's a guy who probably could. Ben Minich, I think he needs some physical development before he's probably ready. But I like him. I like it. I like him for the future. And that's why, too, when you look at like kind of the little bit of the uncertainty there, it's like, okay, that's why we're like, if you're talking about Barnes, you could go from nobody to somebody if you can do something here, because there's not, you can jump the line if you have a good sprint.
There is an ability. If you're a playmaker, you can jump the line, just like you said. That's a good point.
And that's the other thing with Lewis, because the one thing with Clarence Lewis is, he doesn't have, if you put him with a speed guy on the outside, he can't go with that guy. He can't. The elite guys, he can't. And that's why he'll never play corner in the NFL. He just won't be one of those guys, in my opinion. I just don't see that. Like, I can't see him running the kind of 40 time that they would be like, oh, you're going to do that. But as a safety, because he's a smart player, he's a pretty good tackler, he finds the football, he's a guy who's got good recognition. Maybe he's a guy who can play safety. And obviously, he's not a guy that I think has the athleticism to be a single high player, but a split the field player, that can read, that can like drive on the football. I think he could be that kind of guy, maybe. So this is the time, spring, like you said, this is the time to kind of experiment with that. And maybe he isn't. And then that, okay, he can just be this solid guy at corner. But now's the time you can do that, because then you can say, okay, we want to give Chance Tucker a bigger look at corner.
Yeah.
We want to give Mickey more reps there, whatever, right? So I mean, I would be excited if that was the thing we heard. I don't know that's for a fact. This is just me speculating, but I just, would love to hear it.
Yeah. So look, a lot of good things going on in the secondary for Notre Dame. And so it should be a good spring. Again, with the receivers coming up, increased depth there, and the way that Notre Dame wants to throw the ball and that sort of thing. There's going to be a lot of good competition, good matchups in the secondary in the spring that we won't get to see. All right. We're going to end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This was a really fun show. We went over an hour 2 days in a row, Jamie, because we could have gone longer, honestly. I love talking about the football team. It was really fun. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If this is your first time, thank you, everyone, for being here. Hit the like, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Links in the description below for our podcast feed that just went up. We appreciate everyone for tuning in on there. There's a lot of good numbers, Jamie. I'm actually very encouraged by it. I'm excited. So good numbers there. And enjoy the tournament, everybody. Enjoy the weekend. Have a good time. And we will talk to you again on Tuesday.